In 1980, in a parking lot somewhere in Los Angeles, a man opened the trunk of his car. He was not loading groceries. He was not packing for a trip. He was reaching past the pillow he slept on, past the crumpled paper bag with whatever he could afford to eat that day, and pulling out cardboard boxes of shampoo, black and white labels, simple typeface. 2 products, a shampoo and a conditioner. The total cash behind the entire operation was $700. Not 700,000. 700. Split between 2 men, that is $350 each. The prime interest rate that December would hit 21.5%, the highest in American history. Banks were not returning phone calls from companies with $700 in capital. They were barely returning phone calls from companies with 700,000. And this man, John Paul DeJoria, 36 years old, recently divorced, recently homeless, recently everything that the word recently tries to soften, was about to build something that would generate over $1 billion a year and never borrow a single cent to do it. But that comes later. First, you need to understand where he came from, because the origin matters, and not in the way motivational posters tell it. John Paul DeJoria was born on April 13, 1944, in Echo Park, Los Angeles. His father was Greek, his mother was Italian. They divorced when he was 2. For a period during childhood, he and his older brother were sent to a foster home because their mother could not afford to keep them. He has told this story in interviews for decades, consistently, without dramatic embellishment. Just the fact of it, stated plain, a boy whose family could not hold together. A boy who started working early, selling Christmas cards door to door, hawking newspapers on street corners, learning that the distance between having nothing and having something was the willingness to knock on one more door. He would carry that lesson for the rest of his life. Before the shampoo, before the tequila, before the billions, DeJoria held the kind of jobs that biographies tend to rush past. He was a janitor. He sold encyclopedias door to door. He worked at an insurance company. And then, and this matters more than the hardship, he got a job at Redken Laboratories. Redken was a professional hair care company that sold through salons, not drugstores. DeJoria learned how salon owners thought. He learned their margins, their loyalties, their skepticism toward new products, their relationship with the stylists behind the chairs. He absorbed the entire distribution model of professional beauty from the inside. This is the part the mythology usually skips. DeJoria was not a man who wandered into the beauty industry blind. He had worked in it. He understood it. When the Redken chapter ended and he moved to another hair care company that collapsed, and when the money ran out and he found himself living in his car, this is all from his own telling, consistent across decades, though no independent records have surfaced to confirm the exact duration. He was not a man without skills. He was a man without money. There is a difference. The other man was Paul Mitchell, Scottish-born, trained in the Vidal Sassoon system, a hairstylist with a reputation in the New York and Los Angeles salon world for technical brilliance. Mitchell could sculpt hair in ways that made other stylists pay attention. He had credibility. He had a name that salon owners recognized. What he did not have was a business mind or the stamina for door-to-door sales in a recession. DeJoria had both. They put their money together, $700 by DeJoria's account, and in 1980, they founded John Paul Mitchell Systems. The first products were Shampoo 1 and the conditioner. The packaging was black and white. DeJoria has said this was partly aesthetic choice and partly because they could not afford color printing. Whether the constraint came first or the philosophy came first, the result was the same. A label so clean and minimal that it stood out on a salon counter crowded with bright, busy bottles from Redken and Nexus. The marketing budget was a 1-page flyer, black ink on white paper, hand-folded. No photography, no glossy inserts. Now picture the sales call. A man walks into a small Los Angeles salon. Vinyl chairs, fluorescent lights, a mechanical cash register on a Formica counter. The stylist looks up. She does not know this man. She does not know this product. She has heard 100 pitches from 100 salesmen. And DeJoria says something that no one else is saying. Take it for free. Use it on your clients. If they come back and ask for it by name, then pay me. If they do not, keep the bottle and owe me nothing. He was putting every dollar of risk on himself. The man who had nothing left to lose. The salon owner risked nothing. Zero inventory cost, zero commitment. The only thing at stake was whether the product actually worked. It worked. Clients came back. They asked for it by name. Salon owners placed paid orders. And DeJoria drove to the next salon, and the next, selling out of his trunk, sleeping in his car some nights, eating on what he has described as $2.50 a day. The figure varies slightly across tellings, sometimes $2, sometimes $2.50. The precision does not matter. The reality does. A man sustaining himself on almost nothing while building a company bottle by bottle. First-year revenue was approximately $48,000 by his account. Within 3 years, the company was generating millions. And they had not borrowed a cent. Not from a bank, not from a venture capitalist, not from a wealthy uncle. Every dollar of growth came from reinvested profit. From the salon owner in Pasadena who reordered. From the stylist in San Diego who told another stylist, from the client who went home and told her sister. You have probably never thought about how unusual this is. We live inside a business culture that treats outside investment as oxygen. Startups raise seed rounds, Series A, Series B. They pitch venture capitalists. They burn through capital to acquire market share. The entire vocabulary of American entrepreneurship assumes that you need someone else's money to grow. John Paul Mitchell, Systems, reached over $1 billion in estimated annual revenue. The company is private and has never been publicly audited, so the exact number is an industry estimate, not a certified figure, without ever taking a single dollar from outside. No venture capital, no private equity, no IPO, no bank loans after the founding. The only investor was last month's satisfied customer. A Harvard Business School discussion reportedly called it an anachronism in the age of leverage. It was also working. Part of what made it work was a decision that looked counterintuitive at the time. Paul Mitchell products would never be sold in drugstores or supermarkets, exclusively salons. This meant giving up the mass-market shelf space that made Revlon and Clairol enormous. But it also meant that every bottle carried implicit endorsement from a licensed professional. Your stylist used it on your hair. Your stylist recommended it. That was more persuasive than any television commercial, and it cost nothing. When gray market diverters started getting Paul Mitchell bottles onto non-salon shelves, the company fought back aggressively, marking bottles to trace the diversion chain. The exclusivity was not just positioning, it was doctrine. They were also, quietly, one of the first major beauty brands to market themselves as cruelty-free. No animal testing. In the 1980s, this was not the mainstream selling point it would become. It was a values commitment that happened to be a market differentiator. The kind of move that looks obvious in retrospect and was anything but at the time. And then, Paul Mitchell died, pancreatic cancer. April 24th, 1989. He was 53 years old. The company was 9 years old and growing fast. The partnership was working. Mitchell's creative instincts, his product knowledge, his credibility with stylists, paired with DeJoria's relentless sales machine and financial discipline. And then Mitchell was gone, and DeGioia was alone with a company named after a dead man. Think about that for a moment. The name on every bottle, the name on the door, the name that salon owners recognized. It belonged to someone who was no longer there. DeGioia could have renamed the company. He could have sold it. He kept the name. He kept building. He kept building. By the time the company crossed into the hundreds of millions in annual revenue, DeGioia had proven something that the business world still has not fully absorbed. That a consumer products company could scale to enormous size on nothing but product quality, word of mouth, and reinvested profit. No advertising budget to speak of for the first decade plus. No celebrity endorsements, no Super Bowl commercials, just stylists talking to clients and clients coming back. But DeGioia was not finished. And this is where the story takes a turn that catches you off guard, because you thought this was about shampoo. In 1989, the same year Paul Mitchell died, DeGioia co-founded Patron Spirits Company with Martin Crowley, a Santa Fe architect and entrepreneur. Crowley had brought back a bottle of artisanal tequila from a small producer in the highlands of Jalisco, Mexico, the region called Los Altos, where the volcanic soil grows blue Weber agave in dense, sugar-rich hearts. The two men tasted it and saw what almost nobody in the American market saw. That tequila could be a premium spirit, not a spring break punchline. In 1989, tequila in the United States meant one thing: shots, salt, lime, regret. It was the cheapest spirit on the bar, associated with hangovers and college parties. The idea that an American consumer would pay premium whiskey prices for a tequila, that a tequila brand could sit next to single malt scotch, would have been laughed out of any boardroom in the country. DeGioia and Crowley did not ask boardrooms. They made the bottle by hand, blown glass, individual cork stoppers, the small B emblem pressed into the surface. They sourced from small batch producers in Jalisco, insisting on 100% blue Weber agave, no mixto, no shortcuts. The hand-blown glass was imperfect by design. Each bottle slightly different. The message was craft, not industrial scale. The price point was deliberately high, not because the margins demanded it, but because the price itself was the positioning. This is not your spring break tequila. This is something else. They were doing in spirits exactly what they had done in shampoo, taking a product category that consumers associated with cheapness and repositioning it as premium through quality, packaging, and channel strategy. DeGioia was running the same playbook twice, and it worked again. Patron grew. Slowly at first, then faster as cocktail culture shifted, as bartenders discovered that good tequila could anchor a cocktail the way good bourbon did, as restaurants added tequila menus, as the American palate expanded. By the 2010s, Patron was one of the most recognized spirits brands in the world. Not because of DeGioia's name. Most consumers had no idea who he was. Because of the bottle, the taste, and the positioning. Martin Crowley died in 2016. 2 years later, in January 2018, Bacardi Limited announced the acquisition of Patron Spirits International for approximately $5.1 billion. Bacardi's CEO, Mahesh Madhavan, called it one of the most coveted brands in the spirits industry. It was Bacardi's largest acquisition ever. The exact split of proceeds between DeGioia and Crowley's estate is not fully public, but DeGioia held a majority stake. $5.1 billion for a tequila brand started by a shampoo salesman and an architect. Let that number sit for a moment. The man who could not get a bank to return his call in 1980. The man who ate on $2 a day. The man who sold product out of his trunk to skeptical salon owners who had no reason to trust him. That man's second company, not his first, his second, sold for more than the gross domestic product of several sovereign nations. Forbes has estimated DeGiorio's net worth at various points between $2.7 and $4 billion. He has appeared on the Forbes billionaires list since the early 2010s. The exact figure is an estimate. His primary company is private, his assets are diversified, and Forbes' methodology for private wealth relies on industry analysis rather than audited disclosures. But the order of magnitude is not in dispute. The man who collected bottles and cans for recycling money is a billionaire several times over. In 2011, DeGioia signed the Giving Pledge, committing to donate the majority of his wealth to charitable causes during his lifetime or in his will. He joined a list that includes Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. His JP's Peace, Love and Happiness Foundation supports causes ranging from sustainability to ocean conservation. He has been married to Eloise Brody DeGioia since 1993. His longest and, by all available accounts, most stable relationship following 2 earlier marriages that ended in divorce. He has a phrase he uses in nearly every speech, every interview, every commencement address. Success unshared is failure. The origin of the exact wording is unclear, but he has used it consistently for decades, and it has become as associated with him as the black and white label. Now, and this is important, none of this means the story is simple. DeGioia was not a man who emerged from a vacuum. He had worked at Redken. He understood the salon channel before he ever sold his first bottle of shampoo one. Paul Mitchell. The person was not a passenger. He was a genuine creative force whose formulation instincts and professional reputation gave the brand credibility that DeGioia's hustle alone could not have provided. Mitchell died before the company reached its full scale, and the question of what exactly his creative contribution was versus what contracted chemists provided is not well documented in public sources. The $700 was real operating cash, but it was not the only capital. Paul Mitchell's name was worth something in the salon world. DeGioia's industry contacts were worth something. The products themselves had development costs that may or may not be captured in that $700 figure. Memory simplifies over decades of retelling. This is not an accusation. It is how stories work. And the banks refused him narrative, while true, carries an implication of unique rejection that the context does not fully support. Most startups with $700 in capital would have been refused during a period when the prime rate exceeded 20%. The banks were not singling out DeGioia. They were doing what banks do when money is expensive and collateral is non-existent. The story is remarkable enough without needing to be flattened into a motivational poster. A man with genuine industry knowledge, genuine hardship, a genuine partner with genuine talent, and a genuine willingness to absorb all the risk himself. That man built 2 separate billion-dollar enterprises without borrowing money. That is not a fairy tale. That is a specific, documented, and extraordinary business achievement. You have a bottle in your shower right now, or you have had one. Maybe it is Paul Mitchell. Maybe it is a competitor that adopted the minimalist black and white packaging that Paul Mitchell made iconic. The packaging that exists because a man could not afford a second ink color in 1980. The entire clean beauty aesthetic that fills your Instagram feed, the stripped-down labels, the sans serif fonts, the deliberate austerity of design, that lineage traces back, in part, to a man who could not afford color printing and turned the constraint into a signature that the industry spent decades trying to copy. The next time you pick up that bottle, hold it for a second. Feel the weight of it. The man who designed the label had less money in his pocket than you spent on coffee last week. The man who sold the first case carried it in a trunk where he also kept his pillow. The company that made it never took $1 from a venture capitalist, never went public, never leveraged itself against its own future. It grew the way almost nothing grows anymore. One satisfied customer at a time, one reorder at a time, one stylist telling another stylist that this stuff actually works. $700. A car trunk, a pillow, a paper bag lunch, a one-page flyer in black and white, and the willingness to say to a stranger, "Take it for free. If it works, pay me. If it does not, owe me nothing." They always paid.